Do the countdown. Hi everyone, so John here again with another entrepreneur's journey. This time we've got Darwin Carlisle of First Class Reels, and he's going to talk about his and he's going to talk about his journey from pretty much starting with filmmaking, and then how he progressed into forming his own company and going to business as an indie filmmaker. But first, before we go into that, Darwin, if you could talk a little bit about what you're about, and what coming to this point has been what's it mean for you and stuff. Just a little bit of kind of for folks to get to know you. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Well, so yeah, I am a filmmaker. It's been my lifelong dream to basically to participate in the larger conversation that the world is having about issues, ideas, and emotions. And the path that I took was initially just for myself. I just started making a lot of videos just for me while I was working, like odd jobs in the most mundane, categories that you can imagine. I was sort of like a subtitle delivery technician. At one point, I found my way into like 3 different graveyard shifts. Jobs that were, constantly, like they weren't terrible, but they were absolutely very just like mentally traumatizing for me as somebody who's always wanted to like go out and create. And so I went out and I started creating, and I guess over the years I've been able to sort of like parlay that into business by focusing, I was very inspired by a lot of entrepreneurial, just sort of like kind of just conversations that I've been having with people. I'd never thought about filmmaking as a business. And then once I started thinking about it as a business, and I started thinking about markets, and I started thinking about, who to appeal to, and just how to conceptualize myself and the path that I wanted to take, I learned that I did have a skill in the world of filmmaking. In my case, it was directing acting reels, that I was able to bring and find my own little niche that, essentially only I could do. Very specific, I kind of focused on doing the more kind of high-end versions of, just anything that was a promotional material for a performer of any kind. And I realized I was the only one doing it. I was the only one in the market, and it's just recently begun to take off like in earnest, I would say, over the past 2 months.
So what I like to kind of compare the entrepreneur's journey is to the hero's journey, as you may know of, Joseph Campbell's, monomyth and stuff. So, always with the main character, the hero and stuff, there's this certain call to action, something that really incites them into action, stuff like that. What would you say was it that like finally made you decide that like, making actors reels was like a way for you to finally make your break into the film industry?
Well, that's a good question. It was a series of small steps to me. I think there was a particular moment when I had a friend who was conversing with me, and his name was Gabriel Romero, and he did actor reels himself. And, and then I started looking up, and I realized like there were dozens of companies out there doing this. And I was just, wow, like I didn't realize that this was a revenue source that people were able to, to do. And, after talking with him, I, took it up and said, I bet I could do this. So I entered into it, and I found my calling. I created my own, sort of like reel for the reels, threw it up online, and the response has been overwhelming through word of mouth, social media, things like that. I've been able to really, like get people to come back to me, like for return service. It's just like I really feel inspired that I'm actually, have found my place in this world, at least in an initial setting. I feel like I've at least found my path to directing.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what's interesting about the journey for entrepreneurs, is that like you start off doing one thing and stuff, and then it definitely takes a twist and turn, that you don't expect. The thing that also happens, of course, though, is having like a certain moment where it's like things seem bleak, like this kind of moment that like you kind of really question, like, does this make sense and stuff. That's also, I find, really part of the journey and stuff. Was there a moment for you that like you really second guess yourself about what you were doing?
Oh, absolutely. There have been many months of kind of like dry periods. I would definitely say it oscillated, up and then down and then up and then down. Just recently, as a few months ago, I signed up for Lyft and was driving around, and it was just like, the heavens opened up and heard that I had started to have that doubt. And then a flood of clients came in, and I learned I didn't have to end up actually driving more than a week, so it's just kind of funny how often I find myself in that spot of genuinely questioning whether or not I just hit a few lucky breaks, and and then thinking to myself, boy, maybe I need to get a real job. And then, and then when you find yourself meeting with clients and you find yourself taking phone calls and you find yourself, like answering emails that are all kind of inquisitive and genuinely interested in the services that you have to offer, you feel almost like a fish out of water. You're kind of like, wow, I didn't realize that what I'm doing is actually working, and yeah, that's, I would say definitely a few months ago, I was feeling some real doubt, some real doubt.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting too is that then you kind of go from one low to like a high and stuff like that. And I think for me actually, knowing you and stuff like that on a personal level, it was really surreal to hear you on one of the podcasts that I really admired, Entrepreneur on Fire with John Lee Dumas. And so it was kind of like, hey, I know him, and to hear him on the on this podcast, that really follow and stuff like that. So what would you say though, that like along this journey has been kind of like the moments that you've been really like kind of, okay, this is it, I'm living the dream and I'm really proud of what I'm doing and stuff like that. With how about those moments? What kind of has those been recently for you?
Well, one of the fascinating aspect of the Reels business, and particularly I think my specific Reels business, again, there are dozens of companies that do what I do. I differentiate myself. I'm a one-man show. I'm the only person on set with like besides the talent that I show up and I do all the filmmaking myself, and it becomes a very personal one-on-one kind of relationship versus, I think some other ones, they own their own studio and they kind of cycle people in very quickly. So to that end, you end up meeting a lot of people who have extremely large dreams, and you end up conversing with them about those dreams. And you find a connection that, is very rare in this world, I think. You really find that creative beauty, and you see it in people and you see it in practice, and you're able to participate in it by helping them to create and manifest that vision of, and in this case, every actor, has this vision of themselves, and their future career, and you're able to kind of like help them along that path. So I would say that in terms of like my high moments, when I met somebody who flew me out to New York to film an acting reel, and when that reel then became a short film that got into the London Short Film Festival, which was a very, very prestigious moment for me, that felt like a high note, and I would just say, as even recently, just meeting some of the clients that I've met, many of them, have come from very inspiring stories. Like, for instance, my client Angela Durazo is she struggles with a form of rheumatoid arthritis that is just like a very inspiring journey, because she turned herself around and was able to go on to become a triathlete. And as a result, she's got quite a following. She's got a lot of ambition and a big heart and a lot of talent as well. And, so being able to explore her journey and, she filmed the reel with her, and then she immediately followed up and, booked another one right on the spot because she liked it so much. These are the moments that stand out to me and make me say, I've really hit something here. I've found something that really appeals to people.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the thing about, being an artist. It's more than simply putting stuff out that you personally like and stuff like that, but it's like to see how it affects others is really inspirational. In other words, it kind of motivates us to kind of put that much more into what our craft and our art and stuff, and then just to find what it is that inspires us even more. And so what would you say though are some sources of inspiration for you for like kind of like to be more creative, to just find ways to kind of, really help your clients above and beyond, like you say, the other, just the other folks who do reels for.
Absolutely. Well, like I think that the big sort of issue there is just to be constantly listening, because I think that the conceit of reels, the trap you fall into is you start to not take them as seriously as you would other projects. It's just very easy to take a look at the client and to think to yourself, you know what, I've had a hard day, and I'm just going to phone this one in because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that much. And what I found over the years is, for myself at least, I'm usually pretty good at kind of answering that voice with a challenge to myself that I'm going to make this the best thing that I've ever done, and that karma will work itself back to me on some level. And I think that I have been vindicated in that idioms, because you're right. Like, I mean, not all of the reels end up, going on to be successful as I would describe it, in terms of helping me, like find new clients or helping my clients to find new work. But some of them do. Some of them, absolutely in ways that I never would have expected, again, with like the short film, which started out as just a reel. And, because we put so much effort into it, we were like, you know what, I bet we could submit this to festivals. And so we did. And, we were vindicated in that sense. In other circumstances, like I show up to film a reel, and I find out that my client has a much larger following than I anticipated, and a much larger network, and has certain connections that I wouldn't have anticipated. And, so there's a very much of a sense of like, you never know. It's really easy not to take certain reels seriously, but it's more important than you realize to treat everyone as that opportunity that this could be your big break. You have to care about it as much as they do.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting about what you do and stuff, compared to just filming a theatrical project or even a commercial for that matter, because it's kind of, on the one hand, it's got to be a demonstration of the artistic capabilities of the person you're filming stuff, but the other, it's got to have this kind of commercial viability. It's got to for, like you said, not just for them, but also for yourself. So I think that's what's kind of interesting. And I think for creative entrepreneurs in general, we really have to strike that balance between the artist and entrepreneur, where on the one hand, we're pursuing something that's kind of can hopefully grow our business, but the other, to do something that like really is meaningful to us on an artistic level and stuff. And that's what's kind of finding that balance is really, I guess, the trick and stuff. So what would you say though, like in terms of like your next kind of direction or things that you want to see for your next level for yourself as a creative entrepreneur? What does that look like to you?
What that looks like to me is twofold. I have a very selfish and strong desire to have my own directing career. I want to direct movies. I want to direct feature films, and that's really important to me. It's a promise that I made to myself a very long time ago that was going to be my career. And, I've moved my way towards it. I'm getting there, and I want to, I want that to be my future. I want to have a future that involves me standing up and making works of art that people talk about and that inspires and that inspires me. But also, I think I, by happenstance, have really fallen in love with the reels business. I've really fallen in love with, when you look into the eyes of all of these actors and you see what it is that they see and you experience what it is that they experience, you come away with a very strong desire to actually provide the service that you say you're providing, which is to help them get a good quality visual portfolio so that they can have a better chance of breaking into the industry. And, so for me, I'm constantly thinking of ways that I can, maybe find a way to turn first-class reels into something more than just a general videography service. I find myself asking, how could I possibly make this into something that genuinely becomes the go-to place for people to actually go and get their reels made without having to worry that it's going to really suck, that people are going to cancel on them, or that, that it just won't happen, that they won't get their reel back. Like, there's a lot of ambiguity in this business, and there's a lot of need. There's a lot of demand from a lot of very, very poor people, so, it's a lot of questions out there, I think, about how to kind of take a $10,000 scene and put it onto a person's reel who does not have $10,000. It's like, how do you do that? And that's just, I think it's something that everybody's asking themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be a little biased here, and just on a personal level, that like the things I've seen you do with just with the budgets that I know are, I mean, people think of thousands of dollars as being micro budgets in the industry, of course, as you know, but you're doing it for even less than that, and that's phenomenal to me. That's something that, I mean, on the commercial level, to just that is just, in other words, like, let's say it's a small business and stuff, and they want to have a professional looking video and stuff, they would typically expect to spend thousands of dollars, and for what you offer, not to be within the budget of a lot of these small business owners, I mean, I think that's really incredible. And I think the thing that I find compelling is how you can still tell a story just within this framework. And the thing I've talked about different times is being creative with it inside the box. Like, people always talk about being outside the box, and I find that that's the thing that you really work within the constraints to do this. So, like, what are some of the things that, like, really, how do you do that? Like, what is it that, like, kind of allows you to kind of do things that, like, people aren't able to do within, like, that spend thousands more?
Well, I think that I have a lot less, golden cows that I'm mixing metaphors here. But, there's a lot less that's sacred to me on a film set than I think there are to a lot of directors who are used to working with crews of 30 or more. And I've actually worked with crews of 30 or more, and I understand that impulse. And you yearn for it. You yearn for it as a director. I mean, there is a good reason why a lot of very high quality movies have big crews, like that's very useful. But I think that what I am very good at is recognizing when I don't have that, and not thinking that I do, because I think that that's a mistake that a lot of people make. They get onto a really small set and they start demanding and expecting all of these things that they just can't possibly have. I'm very good at working in scenarios where I don't have all of the control that I would want over an environment. I'm very quick and flexible and in the moment. And the useful thing is that often my clients are too. They don't come in with a lot of the same demands that a small business might have. They don't necessarily have an extreme vision of every detail of the shot. And to that end, when I have that flexibility, oftentimes I can hop around, put the camera in non-intuitive places, make the sound into, a kind of like a cinematic variation that is maybe different than you would want if you wanted absolute control. So, for instance, if there's a lot of traffic noise, things in the background, a lot of times I'll glance into that and make the scene kind of look like it was inspired to have that sound in the first place. So I'm very much good at kind of looking at all the elements of a scene, and I try to be very sensitive to everything that's happening. And I ask myself, how can I make this look intentional? How can I make this look like it's something that is really useful? And especially, how can I turn this to my advantage? How can I use this for my reel in a way that strengthens it instead of perhaps not strengthening it? Because I don't have, a sound mixer. I don't have a lot of, just a lot of the elements in post. And what you lose is not just the technical aspect. You also lose the creative the creative world incubator was the word I'm looking for, where you have all these professionals talking back and forth and strengthening an idea because you're really kind of like, you know, like putting your heads together. So a lot of times when you have all of these different elements kind of like swirling in different directions and you can learn to use that, a lot of times you're kind of like, the scene is writing itself right in front of you. And if you know how to pick and choose, you can end up with something very high quality if you can just open yourself up to it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting aspect of the creative process as well, is just this combination of different times being open to possibilities, but then other times, you know, closing it down to like, okay, this is how, you know, we're going to make this happen and stuff. So it's like this kind of reflex or this muscle that you kind of have to develop and stuff. I mean, you know, it just seems like there's so much, you know, that you're taking in a given moment and stuff. It's like combining having that openness with a certain filter, I guess, to recognize what, you know, like you said, what you can use and how you can use it and stuff. So like, how do you develop that? What is it that like kind of has allowed you to kind of being, you know, kind of open in the moment and yet identifying, you know, like kind of narrowing down to what it is that like, you know, really will get you the shot or get you, you know, the performance that you want from an actor and stuff?
Being broke helps, you know, like, I guess it comes down to accountability for me. You know, like I think that one of the things that irritates me about a lot of directors is that you get this sense that lurking underneath a lot of their decision making is this kind of, you know, like it's out of my hands, you know, like if you're working with acting reels that you don't get to choose your actors. If you're looking, you know, like when things get out of your control, you kind of say, well, I'm going to do my job correctly and I'm going to allow them to, you know, do their thing, and I can't control that, you know, like, because a lot of that is often the case. And you know, to me, that's a complete abdication of what it means to be a director. I think the director should get all the credit, good and bad. You know, like in other words, you're the one watching and looking at everything and trying to see if it all comes together. And if something's out of place, you know, whether or not it's fair, I think that's on you. And I think that if, you know, all of the great works of art are personal projects. And if something's personal to you, if it's your own, you're not going to stand for that. You're not going to say, oh, it's out of my hands, you know, the scene will be what it will be. No, you're going to find a way. You're going to stress about it. You're going to like, you know, claw your hair out until you can say, how do I make this look amazing? And to me, that's what I try to bring to it. You know, like I tried making my own feature film without any money a long time ago, and it was a hilarious crash and burn story. But it taught me a lot about my own determination towards, even when all like the chips are down and I like, you know, when it seems like there is no path forward, that's whenever you get the best ideas to say, okay, like no matter what, I'm making this happen. Like, what do I have to do? Because there's nobody out there that's going to pat you on the head and say, well, you did the best. You know, you did the best that you could. You know, like nobody's going to say that. They're going to look at the final product and they're going to say, was it good or not? That's the only question. And that's how it should be. That's how I want it to be. I want people to find that, you know, like passion and to hold me to that standard, because I should hold myself to that standard. And when I do, I become more, you know, happier with the results.
Yeah, I definitely talk about it often. As you see, you know, on film set, it's this kind of union attitude of, oh, that's not my job, and then people write it off and stuff, and they just kind of like clearly delineate, you know, like things that attorneys love, you know, like, okay, that's a clear line of like demarcation of responsibility, and beyond that, I don't have to worry about it because it's not my job. Taking that ownership is something that like is really rare in the industry, and I think it's like, I think to some degree, it can only happen if you're an indie filmmaker. Like it's like then there's this hustle. Like I've been on some student film projects, and people just, you know, like never say that. You never hear that on a student film set, that like, that's not my job. You know, like people just pitch, you know, people pitch in and just, you know, whatever it takes to get the final product. Because like you said, the final product speaks for itself. So the thing is, though, I think the danger, or the kind of the flip side of that is that then we take so much ownership that then, you know, we feel responsible for something that then ultimately maybe is really not something that was ultimately out of our control. Like we did the best we could and stuff like that. So how do you like kind of, you know, at different times kind of, you know, excuse the pun, but reel yourself and kind of like, take that ownership, but yet different times not have that kind of attachment, I guess, if you will, with too much attachment.
Well, I don't know. How you tell me, because like I don't know, like you know, because you're right. At the end of the day, that philosophy is it's a good philosophy to have. It's true. I do feel like there were some projects that I just ultimately, like did not have enough control over, and it's tough, like because you really, I really fret about it, like I really kind of like I look at it, I rewatch over and over again. I show it to my roommates, I show it to my friends, and I'm constantly striving to ask, how can I, what could I have done differently? What, like it is. I think you're right. It's something that does present itself as something that you need to reel in, because like you do end up feeling responsible, because especially when somebody's paying you, and like and when that person is not some faceless corporation, like when that person is using this as their opportunity to go out and achieve their dream, you feel a heavy responsibility to live up to their standards, and to live up to the standard that you think they deserve, to really, because it's a very harsh industry and people are very judgmental, and understandably so, because it's a very central aspect of living. I think we're all very critical of media. We're all media consumers these days, and we look for meaning. We look for a lot of our own selves and our own stories and our own conversations in these worlds. And when it's something that feels off, I think that it's a big fundamental aspect of being alive, and being alive in the modern age, of being extremely critical of anything that fits in outside your worldview, like, and it's not like I love that, but I understand it. And I think that ultimately it's for the best, because at the end of the day, we are all wanting to do our best. We want emphatically to be the best that we can be. We don't just want to get patted on the heads by, like by our friends. We want to actually believe that we created something that really had an impact, like, and that's something that's very, very, very hard to do. Especially on a consistent basis.
I think the part of the problem is that there's so much media that we're just bombarded with nowadays, mobile or internet and stuff. I think that's part of why that we've become very critical. Like millennials are known for being like kind of like just sniffing out anything that sounds like an advertisement right away and stuff like that. They're very much despise that. If anything, though, like you have to kind of get down to a story that's either humorous or something that like kind of really attracts them and stuff. So how do you like find the story or the something that like when you shoot a reel, or when you different times shoot a video for like this and stuff, what is it that like kind of how do you hone down to what that story is that will attract the right attention?
Well, that's a good question. I think a lot of it is kind of like clearing away the debris of other people's opinions, because at the end of the day, all of that judgment, like I don't think anybody's more judgmental than I am, like down at my deep core. Like you'll rarely hear me say that about a lot of media. Because I try to kind of focus on the positive. But in general, I'm extremely critical of everything that I watch, and I have an extremely high threshold. And I think that it's very easy to let this poisonous voice inside your head that lingers, and that poisonous voice is, what does my client think about this? What do they want? What do they expect of me, and how do I like match that? Because they're only bringing that voice because they want to make sure that they get the best out of you. But the best you have to offer has nothing to do with answering that call. It's a very different wavelength. My best talent is the one that comes out of my questioning myself. What do I like the best? What do I want to see from this? What what is my client looking like to do with this? And what do I think is the most likely to live up to that goal? And a lot of times that means making a decision that is at odds with the decision that your client might make. And I think that that is something that you just have to accept as an artist, that you don't come in to be just the, you know, like the person who pulls the lever. You are there to really provide your own filmmaking eye, and that's a very hard thing to bring across, you know, for yourself and in an environment that involves, you know, compromising with other people who are, you know, like who are themselves going to use this.
I mean, the other thing, going back to you know, something you said, was that different times, you know, we can be our own worst critic and stuff. So you have pretty much a very short amount of time to get a lot done and stuff like that. So I guess the question comes down to, like, what is it that, like, kind of, how do you work through that kind of voice that, like, kind of the creative process and stuff. And then for that matter, I'm sure different times you face that with the actors themselves, you know, like kind of they kind of like either get flustered or, so, you know, what do you do to kind of work through that, you know, where the critic becomes so much so that it gets in the way? Because the worst thing for the creative process, I find, is fear. And so what is it that, you know, really can you work through that? Or how can you work through that?
Well, I think one word comes to mind, and that word is trust. I think that fear is poisonous, and I'm very cognizant of it on set. But I think that you very much can rise to the challenge. Like it's almost as though when you meet a client or you meet a person on set who's fearful, it's very easy to retaliate, to see them as somebody that you need to shut down, which, you know, honestly, sometimes that is the case. But for the most part, what I've learned is my style, and is the best answer to that, is trust that they're not totally freaking out. Trust that this person is intelligent, and trust that there is within their communication a genuine voice, maybe something that you don't know. So I think that if you can communicate to people in an articulate way that you are listening to them, and that you have heard them, and that you can then kind of like converse with them about that about that problem and about potential solutions, you'll find, I think, a lot of maneuverability and a lot less intransigence that I think a lot of us perceive when you just learn to trust people, and to learn that when somebody is saying something and you're like, well, of course it'll be better my way and not your way, when you can take a pause and say, okay, well, I hear, you know, this coming from you. A lot of times, like, just like that openness, that's the creative process, like, is opening yourself up. And, you know, if you can maintain your core convictions and maintain your own artistic eye without, like, being a total douchebag about it and saying, you know, like, well, you know, you're an idiot and I'm a genius, you know, like, if you can kind of like learn to listen, it is honestly one of the best antidotes to that sort of like overwhelming criticism that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is, you know, recently I've come across, you know, A Curious Mind by Brian Grazer, and he talks about how his career was basically founded on this quality of curiosity, and trust is definitely the foundation. It's the bedrock of anything, you know, stuff like that. But then the next level is this kind of curiosity, like you said, being open.
Sorry, you're cutting out there. So the first level is trust, but the next level is what?
Is this curiosity and not assuming you know everything, like to actually go out and ask the questions, you know, and so the trust allows you to kind of ask the questions, and for both the person asking to feel safe about it and the other person to feel safe about answering and stuff. But like, I think the curiosity is what kind of is this kind of dynamic that can start then the conversation. But again, like the real thing being in there, that like there isn't this kind of assuming that you know the answers, assuming that you kind of like, you know, oh, that person's an idiot, like you said, that you kind of ask why are they, you know, like going this route or doing it this way and stuff, and to be curious about like kind of what it is about like they're trying to, you know, express or you know, like, and again, it's a very dynamic give and take kind of interaction. But you know, definitely trust is that foundation of stuff. But I think that the other kind of thing is like being curious and kind of finding out, you know, and asking the questions and stuff. Would you say that that's some of the things that like you've kind of also found for your, you know, business as a whole, to like being curious about like, you know, trying different things and seeing what may work, or maybe different ways to kind of, you know, expand and to kind of develop not just as an artist but also as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think I could be doing more of that. Yeah, being open to, you know, being humble that your process might be wrong. All of these things is, you know, extraordinarily important. And what's interesting though is it is a little bit at odds, I think, with another aspect of creativity, which is, you know, like resolve. I mean, like a lot of times I do think you have to really invite your own narcissist really into you and allow that person to be, because I think that's another fault that we can come into. A lot of times it's you know, the sense is that we can be too stubborn. I think a big fault oftentimes is that we can be too open to things, that we can you know, and to me what that signals is a lack of passion in you know, in certain circumstances. When you say to yourself, oh, this is you know, I'll take any result, it can be an avoidance. It can be a way to say, you know, this isn't my project, this isn't what I care about, or this isn't, you know, like I don't really, you know, like have my full self, you know, sort of invested in this. I think that sometimes I pride myself on being a little bit stubborn, on allowing myself to, you know, like to really push my own creativity and my own ideas forward. So I think that it feels like a balancing act to me, where I try to maintain my own inner self and my own, you know, like artistic voice while doing that, while trying to say to myself, I don't know everything, I could change, and to take every challenge as an opportunity, and to take every new opportunity as a potential for learning something, and, you know, as a potential to say, you know what, maybe I am doing it wrong.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is like, just, you know, like you said, it's kind of this balance, as we kind of talked a little bit about, you know, being open to possibilities, but at different times having enough passion and resolve to kind of like to actually execute something. So in other words, you know, it's great to like see all these different possibilities, but then at different times to just actually like pick one thing and to you know, see where it leads, you know, like kind of follow that string and stuff like that. So like it seems like right now that's the thing. It's like just basically helping actors, and then you and I have talked a little bit about possibly helping other businesses and stuff like that. Is this what kind of things do you see as like kind of you know, like just even for example, you shot the video with the Blue Elephant Cafe. What do you feel that like is it that you really bring to it that like other, you know, videographers or other, you know, kind of directors really, what is your unique voice for you know, these different businesses?
Well, you know, what's interesting about that video at the Blue Elephant Cafe, you know, it was a promotional video for you know, a cafe down the street that's got a very artistic, community-oriented vibe, and I interviewed the owner. Is how many of my acting reel clients come to me having viewed that video, and they cite it as one of the reasons that they wanted to work with me. There's an intersectionality between acting reels and the larger videography business that, you know, again, it all comes down to telling a story. But it's a certain kind of story. It's a story about ourselves. It's a story about people. And it's a story about people, you know, bringing their own dream to life. And whether that's you as an actor or you as a business owner, it's very easy to kind of like hear all the criticism that the world has to offer, and then try and turn your voice into something that morphs into that, that you know, fits neatly within all of the lines. And the problem is, as you said, with millennials tuning out advertising, we're also tuning out the non-authentic voices. We can tell when somebody isn't authentic, and it's not good for business. It's not good for anybody. And, so I think that where I see myself growing and where I see myself intersecting between acting reels and other videos that I make is, again, it's that authenticity. It's about learning that, like when you clear away all of this crap that everybody else is saying to you, a lot of times all of these entrepreneurs, they have a very genuine, very authentic, and very unique story that they're trying to tell that is inspiring. And that a lot of times, if you convey it in an unprofessional way, doesn't help you. But if you try and just make a, like a Walmart ad or something like that, it doesn't help you either. You have to find that middle ground where you stay professional and you actually allow yourself to be authentic.
As advice for somebody who's like, they're wanting to get into filmmaking now, and then this is the environment that they have, is that, like, on the one hand, they have all these tools available to them, but the other, there's all this, social media, online noise and stuff like that. What would you kind of offer as, like, how should they go about, like, kind of starting to find their voice, to start honing their craft and kind of, create their art and stuff?
Well, I think that one of the things, again, that helps me is, think like a businessman, like think like an entrepreneur, like life is there for the taking. And a lot of the lines, a lot of the gatekeepers, a lot of the problems that you see, and the barriers, it's not that they're false, but they're not insurmountable. And they're not something that, there is a path for you. You just have to be very honest with yourself about what it is that you're trying to do, what it is that you're trying to create, and go forth in a way where you can be mindful of the parameters of, of the landscape that you're living in, but that you can maintain a certain level of authenticity, and what I mean by that in practical terms is go out, create, manifest specific goals for yourself, and go out and do them. Say to yourself, okay, well, this can't happen. Well, what's something that you can control? What's something that you can do? Can you go create content? Can you go make something? Can you go do something? Go and do that. Go create. Go do something, because that's the thing that is going to progress your career. Maybe not in a linear straight line, maybe not in the way that you want it to, but if you go out and you're doing something every day, that is 10 million times more likely to yield a result than just thinking about it and doing very little.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite cartoons is by Dimitri Martin from This Is a Book, and it's like shows, the what success, like people think success looks like, and it's this kind of straight line, right? And then on the other hand, and then next to it is like what success really looks like. It's this kind of like squiggly, gnarly kind of, line and stuff like that. And I think that's absolutely what you just said was just true, that you just, as an entrepreneur, and especially as a creative entrepreneur, you have to just basically put it out into the world, try different things, seeing, what the feedback is and stuff. So I definitely, agree with that. So thanks so much. I really appreciate your time. Is there any kind of other parting advice you want to kind of give to folks who are just kind of out there and like trying to find their place in the world as an artist, as an entrepreneur?
I would say that one of the things that I would say, is most important is, find the right people. Like nobody does it alone. And even if, like me, like I do most of my actual work alone, I have a lot of people that I bounce ideas off of. I have a lot of people who give me amazingly good feedback. I live in a big artistic community house. That is the kind of creative space that allowed me to get to where I am, I think, because having that level of creative input from different kinds of people has allowed me to really genuinely move forward with my career in a way that was authentic, but where I allowed myself, I asked myself those hard questions that you have to honestly ask yourself. You do eventually have to come around to a lot of the hardest questions out there, and you do have to learn all of your failings, and you have a lot of them. But if you find yourself around the right people, then you, like you, John, I mean, like, you have helped me a lot. You have given me lots of advice, and I've absorbed it. I've learned it, and we've stayed in touch because of that. And you can go out, especially in the age of social media, go out constantly, find the people that make you happy, that fill that creative void, listen to them, talk to them, shout your own feelings, and then take that and move forward. Because, again, like, it's all about finding that good core, amazing group of people that, like, maybe it shifts around and maybe it changes, but at the end of the day, you need people to bounce ideas off of.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm a big proponent of the idea that, a rising tide raises all ships, that you have to surround yourself not only with people that support you, but lift you up. Because that's typically, when the times are bad, they're going to, make sure that you don't fall too hard. But then when times are good, you have somebody to celebrate. So thanks so much. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely, so John, thank you.
So that's all we have for this time. And, always, feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube, and definitely we'll look forward to having a next Entrepreneur's Journey. And thanks again for Darwin for coming in and talking with us, and we'll see you next time.
Yep, see ya.
Okay.